Welcome to the Fraserview online gathering. It's great to be back with you. I had a good week off and a good week in class. I learned a few interesting things and reflected on how Christianity and Greco-Roman world interacted. We encourage you to lean into our gathering, sing the songs, answer the questions, stop the video, answer the questions with whoever you're with. And we encourage you to look at the prayer document to pray for our community during the week. A reminder that there are things for kids and youth on our various social media and website and on our social media stuff, so do find ways to connect yourself.
Worship our King. Come, let us bow at His feet. He has done great things. See what our Savior has done. See how His love overcomes. He has done great things. He has done great things. Oh, you are living, you conquered the grave, you freed every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awakened to life. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great. Storm, you'll be faithful forevermore. You have done great things, and I know you will do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. God, you do great things. Our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. And hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you conquered the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh, God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awakened to life. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You have done great things. God, you do great things.
One of the outstanding features of the Fraserview building is the stained glass windows. They are expertly designed to capture the light and to tell the biblical story. I'm sure you've spent plenty of time reflecting on them as you've looked at them over the years as you've worshipped at Fraserview, allowing them to draw your eye to what God is doing in the world and what he has done previously. We're going to spend the next few weeks reflecting on them, reflecting on some of the major images and letting it draw us into Jesus' story, what he's doing in the world, and how those values are reflected at Fraserview. And I want to thank Tom Pruden for helping me in particular to reflect on what the various images in the stained glass window have. We won't be able to cover them all, but it does tell us a lot about the biblical story there. The artistic medium of stained glass reminds us of a frequent feature of our life as we follow Jesus, as we are his disciples. Stained glass is illuminated by light shining through it. And in the same way, what happens in our lives is illuminated by Jesus' light shining into our lives and through our shared life together. We all have practices and rituals which make up both our communal life and our individual life. And what happens is, when Jesus is at the center of what we do, we see him shining through those practices and rituals. And so there's various stages in the formation of those practices and rituals. Initially, a new practice can be exciting, or maybe it's uncomfortable, or it's confusing as we get used to it. In the middle stage, practices that are familiar to us are really shaping us through their repeated action, but they also become comfortable and they help remind us of previous times when we have encountered God and when God has been present in the community with us. And in a final stage, practices can start to have gone on too long. They can start to lose some of the dynamic and energy which initially helped shape our life. This is often what we mean in the careless use of the word tradition. Things become traditional, they become a little stilted. We're doing them just because they make us feel nostalgic, or just because we've always done it. They no longer are as lively as they initially were. And so there's a complicated process that happens in our lives where we have to discern how practices now fit into our life, both as individuals and as people in community. Which practices help us reflect the values that we want to have in the world? Which ones reflect the fact that Jesus is at work in our community? And which ones do we need to let go as we continue to grow and journey with Jesus day by day? Altogether, we're looking for practices that will help lead us to Jesus, through which other people then will experience Jesus and will see Jesus shining through us, just as light shines through the stained glass windows. The two stained glass windows recount high points from the two testaments that we reflect on as Christians. The left-hand one tells the Old Testament story beginning at the top with creation and descending down through three figures that mark out significant points in the story and significant ways in which God relates to us. The right-hand one tells the New Testament story, beginning at the bottom with the empty tomb and the resurrected Jesus, and proceeding up through the giving of the Spirit, the ascension of Jesus, and finally heaven at the top, all framed by the cross that has made it possible. This week, of course, we're going to begin with that creation story. The beginning point of the story, which reminds us about several very important things about the world in which we're living. Creation reminds us that God made a decision and acted in order to bring everything into being. This is not an accidental thing. Our lives are not accidents. They have purpose, and they are designed to be wrapped into God's story, into his story of him loving the world and bringing about life there. So it's all about God's action, his decision, his desire to have other creatures to share his love with. And in the stained glass window, that's indicated by the way the light is coming in from the left as it enters into the darker parts of the window. What we see in the stained glass window is the result of that light coming in from the left. We see that the light and the darkness has been separated out, and the darkness has been made to serve a purpose as the sun is placed there, the David star right at the top, but we also see the moon and the stars in the right-hand panel on that window. The sun as David's star reminds us that God from the very beginning intended to rescue his people. He always intended to continue to come as light into this dark world in order that he could draw people into his light. Of course, none of us like to consider the darkness. None of us like to reflect on it, but we all experience it in various ways. We either see it happening in the world outside us, and occasionally we experience in the very personal confines of our life. And I think the darkness can play an important part in helping us discern how we are to follow Jesus and what he has given us to do in the world. The darkness may assist us in seeing where we can be people who serve alongside Jesus. Sometimes the darkness makes us aware of where there's a need in the world that we should be stepping into. We should be acting in. And so we are invited into that moment. We are invited to become part of the light which is recreating and shaping the world and slowly driving the darkness out as Jesus is doing. So my question for you is, where do you see the darkness in the world? My life has always resonated with people who feel alone and without purpose. And it's interesting in the way that people are created. We shape ourselves and we enter into community by knowing that we have something to offer to the community. Frequently, we know that we are deeply involved when we are giving and serving ourselves, as well as experiencing the benefits of a community. There's this exchange that goes on where we give something that we have and we receive other benefits back from the community. And this, of course, is a significant way in which Jesus embraced me in my life. And I think it's a way in which he desires to embrace others in his life. He desires to say, you are no longer alone. You have something to share and to give to my people. And so when I look out on the culture that is going on in our world, I see lots of people who are trying to answer the question about where they fit in and what they can offer to the world. And this is, of course, part of the appeal that forms so many of the groups in our society, from those that do great good to those that do great evil. Groups are formed around the idea that you fit here and you have something to offer the world by engaging in this behavior. And so when we think about the rise of tribalism in our world and in our society, this is always about the search for community and the search to be able to serve and to shape the world so that it can be a better place, so that it can provide meaning for the person. And so ultimately, when we look at that world, we recognize that Jesus is the light. He's the one who understands how the world is to go together, and he understands how to use our lives and to help us draw out the gifts which we are to give so that we can be part of a society that is changing the world and creates meaning for us. And often that's not in the ways that we expect. Jesus often works in small and hidden ways which slowly change society, but he invites us to be part of that community.
I see darkness in people's behavior. I see it when they are unkind, when they are impatient, when their perceived needs are not being met, and when they deny or question the skills and knowledge of other people. So this is particularly true during this time of a pandemic. When I hear people talk about questioning the health experts and the professionals, it makes me think, does that mean you can step back and you know more than these people who are trained and skilled? I think of the people who are impatient with the vaccine rollout schedule. It makes me wonder, are you questioning that you could make a few phone calls and get this happening a little bit faster? And I also think about the times when people choose not to wear a mask in public places. That makes me think that you actually don't care about the needs of other people. These acts of unkindness, of impatience, and of feeling we know it all are the dark places that can actually suffocate us. I don't see the light of Jesus shining through when I see that kind of behavior. So that's the kind of behavior that I want to push up against, and I want to demonstrate through my actions and through my words how we can bring Jesus' light into the world.
I can definitely see darkness in the way that the world is divided. It seems as if hostility continues to increase, not only between political parties, but also between different aspects of religion. This happens on a large scale as well as locally, and it doesn't take a long time looking at the news or Twitter to see a lot of different people angry about a lot of different things. But even between family members and friends, there are a lot of things that can divide people. Speaking specifically of interpersonal relationships, the pandemic has made it hard to sustain even these positive friendships. I've got a lot of friends that I don't see in person nearly as much because of this pandemic, and that acts as a form of darkness in my life. So while a lot of creativity is required from us to sustain unity and personal friendships, I would definitely see the lack of unity as a darkness in these days.
In the panels below the sun, moon and stars, there is a roughly circular ball which I think represents the earth. What we notice is the light is rushing in, God's light is rushing in from the left-hand side, and it's entering into this swirl of dark colors and then some reds. And what we're seeing is God's light, I think, impacting and affecting the earth that he has created. There's a great sense of motion that is going on there, this mixing of the different colors. And I think this reminds us of the way in which God has created the earth. It reminds us about things which he has put into the world. And the first thing that I am reminded of is that darkness and light are both part of our experience in the world. We all experience both of these things, and we live in this contest between light and dark. And second, I'm reminded that the light pouring in is an image of the way in which God is investing and energizing the world and changing it and transforming it. He is the God who transforms us so that the light can break in and so the light can be more present. The light changes things, it sets stuff in motion. And so when we can encourage our world to have more light in it, that then changes the world that we live in. And third, because we live in this type of world where light and darkness are both present and the light is breaking in and transformation is occurring, that means that we all have choices to make. We have choices about whether we will respond to Jesus' work, whether we will join him in being part of the light. And it's always tempting to hide away or to try to ignore the darkness. But instead we live in this world that is contested space between light and dark. And we are invited to enter into that contested world. And so our actions, our decisions, they all have great significance because they're affecting that balance between light and dark. And Jesus gives us great honor in inviting us to be part of his people who will be light to this world. And so as we reflect at Fraserview on things that shape us and are of value to us as a community, we recognize that our mission statement talks about this motion, this energy, this direction that is created by the light coming into the world. We are people who are helping lead each other and lead others to find and follow Jesus. And this, of course, embeds us into some deeper values that are in our community. We value reaching out to people because there are people out there who haven't yet responded to the light and who live in darkness and have need to hear about the light. We, of course, value discipleship because we all know that we have to grow into the light. We have to become people who are more and more shaped by the light. So there's a journey that is going on in our life, a transformation that is occurring through the power of Jesus. And of course, this all means that we have to we value depending on God because he is the source of light. He's the source of transformation and change so that we are not just left in a world that is dark. And so there's this great promise that the light is changing the world. And we are a light, we are a community that has been formed by that light. And it is changing us as it changes the world. And we are invited then to join with Jesus in continuing to express and to pour that light out into the world. This all happens as we gather together and as we commit ourselves to following Jesus. So I want to ask you, where are you able to be light in people's lives? One of the ways in which I bring light into people's lives is by asking good questions. An incisive question can get into the depths of a person and help them go into places that are sort of hidden from their immediate reality. It helps them explore the depth of the way they're thinking and acting. It can get into assumptions that make the person think that these are the only way that things can be, or these are the only ways that things can be done, or these are the only ways in which things can go together. So a good question allows us to open up new ways of thinking. For efficiency's sake, our biology has created us in a way so that we often go with the flow of our community, the flow of the way everyone else is thinking. It helps us to be part of communities and to share together, and it helps us save resources as we don't push back against the world. But part of this picture of the light pouring into the world reminds us that God often encourages us to act differently, to think differently. We often have to push back against the normal way of doing that. We have to question assumptions and think about how the world could be a different place because Jesus arrived. And I think questions play a very important part in aiding us to pursue Jesus, to pursue his light as it enters the world.
I have heard so often in the last 10 months the statement that we are living in an unprecedented time. And I couldn't agree more. But I do wonder what happens if we shift our perspective. What if instead of thinking that we are in this unprecedented time because of the disasters, the international, national, and local struggles that we're having as we face this pandemic and try to overcome this virus and continue to live our lives and struggle with that, what if instead of having that perspective, we shifted our perspective to think about these unprecedented times of opportunity to show kindness and care and consideration and patience with each other, because we are indeed all in this together. I have had the very unwelcomed opportunity to participate in a number of conversations with staff, residents, and families at Royal City Manor, where my mom is. I've participated in town hall meetings and telephone conversations, many emails, many family council meetings over the last 2.5, 3 weeks, and quite honestly, I'm exhausted from hearing it and discouraged by hearing that just yesterday at our meeting, there are 82 people, residents and staff, who have tested positive for COVID, and 9 people from the home have passed away. Those are very, very difficult things to consume and follow, and it's hard to sleep at night, to be honest. But if you could be on the other end of those phone calls, on the other end of those emails, on the other end of those conversations, and hear the care and concern and love and compassion that that staff is working with to care for our loved ones that we can't see right now, you would think differently about these unprecedented times. If you could hear from families, to hear about how there are so many questions all the time saying, what can we do to help you as a staff? How can we care for you? How are you doing? We trust you with our loved ones. These are unprecedented times. And I believe that the staff at Royal City Manor, they're working so hard to try to keep our loved ones safe. They are the ones showing the light, and that's what I need to continue to do. So I ask you to continue to hold in prayer the residents and staff of Royal City Manor. Anne and Carolyn's dad, Gordon, is there. Alexis's husband, Bram, is there. And my mom, Sylvia, they all live there, and they are all COVID positive. They're all doing really well right now. But I do ask that you continue to hold the residents and the staff and the families in your prayers, because these are unprecedented times. This is an opportunity for God's light to shine and for us to see how others are caring for our loved ones when we can't be right there to do it for them.
Relating to my previous answer about the lack of unity, I'm reminded about the many times that Paul in his letters calls the church to having unity with one another in Christ. Specifically in Ephesians 4, he writes, "Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace." I think that this can happen in two ways that I can think of. First is with the creativity of finding ways to actually connect with one another. I'm not much of a video game player most of the time, but I've got a lot of friends who play video games, and that's an easy way to put on a headset and talk to people that I don't usually get to talk with. And while it's a habit that can definitely be destructive if used poorly, it's actually acted as a way for me to connect with some friends that I definitely wouldn't be able to otherwise. But the other aspect of this idea is that I think I'm able to be a light in people's lives when, through peacekeeping and through peacemaking, I'm able to imitate Jesus well in my relationships. Like everything, this is something that I'm working on, but I see it working out in my friendships as I do my best to avoid harboring frustration with others and seeking to work things out before relationships get seriously hurt. And so those are kind of the ways that I'm trying to act as light in people's lives.
The stained glass window reminds us of how God's light is entering the world. What we see right at the top of the New Testament one on the right side of the windows is that it is all light. Heaven is this golden, warm place. And so we're reminded that slowly Jesus is shining his light into the world. And Jesus' light should be visible in all that we do, in the entirety of our lives, and in all that we do together as Fraserview. He is working to bring his light into dark situations, and he invites us to be light bearers who join with him in his mission to bring light into the world. So this week I would encourage you to reflect on the ways that you can be light in people's lives as you go about, and that you can call on Jesus to give you his light as you serve and care for those who are in your life.
Hello, Fraserview. We're excited to share with you another opportunity to learn about somebody in our congregation, Jim Alcock. He will be telling us his story and how God is reflected in his work. Before I do that, though, I want to just read to you the list of people who we have interviewed so far, so that if you think this is something that you could do, give me a shout, just email me, and we can line it up so that we have an opportunity to learn a little bit about your story as well. So far we have heard from Larry and Laura, Tyler, Tom, Diana, Lindsay, Abraham, Trudy, Joy, Simon, Dylan, and now Jim Alcock. So work is good. God created us to work, and we can use our work to glorify him. So let's listen to Jim's story. So first of all, Jim, tell us about your work.
Well, I'm the custodian here at Fraserview. I look after the building. I look after the school. I keep things neat and tidy. I used to mow the lawn, but not much time for that anymore. I enjoy it. I get to be inside. I get to be with people that are good to work with. And I really have nothing bad. I mean, my hours are good. My hours are steady. And I get to get up each morning and enjoy coming to work. So that's always a good thing.
And it's kind of nice hours, and it's good that you enjoy your work because you're a new grandpa.
I am. For the second time.
For the second time.
2020 was a mess, but I started it with a grandbaby.
Yes.
And I ended it with another grandbaby.
Oh, that's perfect.
I got a boy and a girl.
That's perfect, yeah. Well, and it's great having you here. And doing something like this is just another way for us to see how God's work is glorified. So, as an image bearer of God, how do you think your work reflects some aspect of God's work?
I would have to say in service. I talked with Pastor Mike from the Canaan Church. I talked with him a lot of times, and he said, you're doing God's work here. He says, you're keeping his house tidy and keeping it ready for whatever's needed. So I think that pretty much summed it up for me.
Yeah.
It made a lot of sense when he was talking, and I mean, like I say, I enjoy it. And
So when we think of your opportunity to do service, I look at the number of people who come through the building, maybe who came through the building, but there's lots of different ages. There's lots of people from different cultures, different communities, and I also think that your service is not just within the building. I see you outside in the parking lot. I see that you're aware of what's going on in the community.
Well, the other day, for instance, I was out taking out some garbage, and one of the community men came up and asked me about taking some of the puffballs off the hydrangeas that he wanted to make a display with, but he wanted to check and make sure it was okay before he just came and did it. I told him, yeah, no problem, take all you want, and So he came back later that afternoon with his grandchild and took a handful of them and was very appreciative, and going home to make a little display with them.
And it'd be so easy for us to think that that's just a simple thing.
Yeah.
But really, when you think of it, you have cared for somebody in the community, you've provided a service to them, and you've interacted with now 2 generations of people from the community.
Yeah, the kid's very excited about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Had his Spider-Man hat on and everything.
Yeah. And those kind of connections, that is God's work.
Yeah.
So it's I think that your job, service, but also hospitality. You're, caring for other people and getting to know other people.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of your job. To say nothing for your skill to keep the place clean, and particularly now, to keep it sanitized.
Yeah.
How has COVID changed your job?
A lot more, not necessarily cleaning, but the sanitizing end. I mean, the cleaning I was doing before, but now I go through, I clean it, then I have to go through and I have to sanitize it. So for instance, with the school, I have to go through and I have to clean all the desks and chairs and spray them and wipe them and everything else.
Yeah.
Then I have to go and do the same thing again. So it's doubling the amount of time for some tasks.
Yeah.
And that is a bit of a conundrum and a bit of a demand.
Yeah.
But it's something that needs to be done in order for things to work here. So you do what you have to do.
And when we think of the needs of people being safe, that has got to reflect a lot on your work right now. Yeah. So being part of that safety team, I guess, of making sure that the place is sanitized and cared for, so that everybody who comes through is clean. And I also know your service. We have Abraham come in once, and soon to be twice a week, to do some work experience here, and the support that you give him, just even teaching him the other day how to wash windows. That opportunity to care for him and his future and what he needs to do to engage in meaningful work in the future. That is greatly appreciated, Jim. I want to thank you for that.
My pleasure.
For being a real support for Abraham. So that's wonderful. Those are all great things that you're able to bring God's glory into your work. But you also have an opportunity to see some of the brokenness of the world, just from the role that you carry here at Fraserview. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we get some rather unsavory characters hanging around in the back a lot, because they can't go home and smoke and drink, so they come and sit in the parking lot here and do it here. So, I mean, there's been a few bad interactions, but for the most part it's been pretty good. We had a few of them that would, come and dump garbage out of their cars, and if I saw them, I'd tell them off about it, make them pick it up, and just tell them that you're welcome here, but don't be a problem. If you're not a problem, there won't be a problem. So most of them have gotten it and are very respectful. They don't leave a lot of mess. A lot of times on my walks around the building and stuff, I'll find bottles and cans that go into our recycle program, and it'll always be a little pile of them. So they won't just throw them everywhere. They'll leave them in one spot. And occasionally I do find broken glass out there, but for the most part I don't even find that. They don't break the bottles, they don't make a big mess, they behave themselves.
I like the way you look at it kind of from a positive perspective.
Yeah.
thinking that they are, it may not be the thing that they should be doing, but they're not being damaging, and you are welcoming them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, as long as they behave.
As long as they're behaving and being responsible to clean up their mess. Yeah. Yeah. So we are called to love our neighbors as ourselves. So how does that fit into your role?
I guess just by being pleasant with everybody that comes through that I do interact with, whether it be the pastors and the staff here or the staff and students at the school. Just try and be pleasant and cheerful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I'll be walking down the hall and one of the students, oh, hi, hello. You know, so.
When I think about it, I think you are actually probably the only staff person who has the most interaction with both sides of this building right now.
Yeah.
The school and the church side. You're the one that's the going through back and forth. We're pretty much staying over here, and the school pretty much, well, they, because of COVID, they're staying at their end.
Yeah,
but you're the link.
Yeah.
That's an important, yeah. Jim, I want to thank you. Is there anything you want to add about what it means to work for God's glory?
Well, we all work for God's glory in one way or another. And we're all called to work. We all have to work. And all I can say is find something you enjoy and do it.
Yeah.
Because if you got to work, you got to at least be happy at it.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you said that right at the beginning, that it's a good job to come to, and then you get to go home to your grandbabies and your
Well, I get to go home to
beautiful
one.
wife. Yeah, and to one of your
But,
grandbabies.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
You get to see the other one a little bit too, so.
Yeah. Good advice, though. We all have to work.
Yeah.
That is the reality, and do something that you enjoy.
Always.
Yeah. So thank you for telling us a little bit about your story and your
My
journey
pleasure.
here. Before we say goodbye, I want to just pray for you and for other people in our community who are doing similar work or other work that is serving God. So Jesus, I want to thank you for bringing Jim here to our building. I know that he was working outside with Larry in the cold weather, and the opportunity for him to come here has been a blessing for him and his body and for his family, that he has been able to continue to work and provide for his family. God, I want to thank you for all of those people in our community who are serving and who are providing hospitality as they have this beautiful opportunity to show your light through the darkness of this world. And I reflect on Andrew's sermon today about the stained glass and the light of Jesus shining through us and shining through the stained glass. And I thank you that I'm able to see that and witness that so often in Jim and in other people that I see serving within our community, whether they're paid or unpaid, serving and caring for those around us. So Jesus, thank you for bringing us to a place where we can reflect on our work and we can consider how it is that our work brings meaning to our lives and also glory to you. So in all of these things, we pray in your glorious name. Amen.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. Oh, you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, 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 that is who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh, 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 that is who you are. That is who you are. Oh, that is who you are. Oh, that is who you are.
Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory
thank you for joining with us this morning. We remind you that we have an Alpha course starting on the 4th of February. That's a Thursday evening. The Zoom link will be in the email, so if you're not in the email, do sign up for that. And we're also finding that there's opportunities for redistribution of furniture. So if you've got something that you are planning to throw out or trying to give away, we encourage you to contact Lou, and she might have someone who is interested in receiving it. We hope that you will go this week and that you will experience the light of Jesus shining on your life, and that you will be that light in the world. So be blessed.